Hey, it's Quadix here. I'm here with another part of What If Naruto Was Like Minato. I hope you're all having a great day, and if you're not, I hope you have a better day after this. I would like to remind you all to smash that like button. For every like we hit, one of Sakura's brain cells gets revived. There's plenty of dead ones, so I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button. Maybe she'll finally be a decent character in this story. Comment Q or any other comments you may have, any suggestions you may have. Subscribe if you haven't already. And let me give a very short summary about what's gonna happen. So Naruto's cousin is gonna get explained, his backstory and stuff, well, a bit of it. And Naruto's final test with Jiraiya after the whole 3-year training trip is the beginning is going to happen, and it should be very interesting. I wonder how the fight with him and Jiraiya are gonna go. I won't keep the intro too long. I hope you enjoy the video. Let's get into it. Roll the intro. Flashback. Jiraiya and Naruto remained standing where they were, bodies tense even though the shinobi that ambushed them dropped like flies. Naruto's eyes flickered towards his right, having sensed where their savior was. "To think we would run into one," Jiraiya chuckled as he relaxed. Naruto returned with a smirk. "Guess I gotta count myself lucky, don't I?" They were still surrounded by the chains, whose spear tips turned towards them as they hovered around, poised to attack any moment. Naruto guessed that they must be dealing with an adult Uzumaki with special chakra, because judging from the pointed tips, this was the mastered version of the adamantine chains, the same ones that his mother possessed. "We won't attack you," Naruto spoke loud and clear, hoping to meet up with his fellow Uzumaki. "Can you reveal yourself?" "My name is Uzumaki Naruto." The change lingered in the air, but Naruto's and Jiraiya's eyes managed to spot momentarily freezing them before they started moving again. Suddenly they retracted sharply, as if being sucked away into a vacuum. Naruto and Jiraiya turned towards their right when they heard hurried footsteps approaching. Naruto's heart started beating faster as a mop of spiky red hair came into his sight, but he blinked dumbly when a teenager emerged from the forest, his face full of hope. He was of similar age to Naruto, and even though he wore civilian clothes, the muscle on his arms was a clear indication that he was fit. He was slightly shorter than Naruto and had an angular face with purple eyes. His hair was long, reaching down to his upper back, but not tied. 2 spiky tails hung on the front of his shoulders. Naruto was a bit taken aback when the teenager lunged forward and grabbed his shoulders, shaking him a bit in hysteria. "Are you really an Uzumaki?" Yeah, even though I don't have red hair," Naruto answered, gently praying the hands away. He froze though, when the red head buried his face in his chest and started sobbing. His arms clung around him in desperation, as if he had found something long lost. "Oh, thank God, thank God." Naruto slowly wrapped his arms around the teenager, wearing a confused expression on his face. Jiraiya was understanding as he moved to give them some space. "Oh, thank God, I never thought I would find another Uzumaki." It tugged at Naruto's heart at just how broken his voice was. Trying to distract the guy from what was disturbing him so much, he fished for a name. "So, what name do you go by?" The teenager lifted his head and wiped his tears with his sleeve, but Naruto could tell the smile on his face was of genuine happiness. "My name is Uzumaki Haruto, and it's a pleasure to meet you." Flashback end. Suffice to say, their first meeting was interesting. Naruto had been thrilled to discover a part of his family, as distant as it was. He learned that Haruto was usually a calm person, but easily got excited about things that interested him. He had been living alone in a hot water country ever since his parents were killed by hunters when he was... It doesn't say an age. When he was a child. The only reason he got spared was because the nin weren't aware of his existence, and he was very good at hiding, despite his powerful chakra reserves. That and he killed the hunters in a fit of rage. Ever since then, Haruto avoided attention if he could, working daily to earn his bread. Jiraiya was impressed that even though Haruto did not become a ninja, he had mastered the use of his chakra chains at such a young age, without anyone to guide him. The kid got a lot of potential. It didn't take much to convince him to go with them, since he was already considering it. Naruto had a feeling that Haruto would be glued to him for some time. He wouldn't want him to get out of his sight. As the trip progressed, Jiraiya trained both of them. He was already unleashing hell upon Naruto. He couldn't help but feel pity for his cousin, who hadn't worked this hard ever in his life. But as the months passed, Haruto kept on improving. As he improved, his self-esteem did as well. Naruto prevented Jiraiya from corrupting Haruto with his perverted ways, but the latter still developed a penchant for making dirty jokes every now and then. That, and he also became a bit of a smartass. Naruto had a feeling that Haruto was a natural at that. Haruto shrugged. Maybe when he's had his fill. The wind blew a bit strongly, threatening to douse the fire, but thankfully it sustained. Naruto's nose picked up a familiar smell heading towards their way. Guess he finally had his fill of the night, Naruto dryly commented. He was right when 5 minutes later a large outline of a figure came into view, striding into their camp. So, how was the mission, brat? Naruto chucked the rock at his head, which Jiraiya easily caught in his hand. You call that an A rank? What? Gathering information from spies is at least mid-A rank, kid. You should be thankful I let you go in my place. Jiraiya puffed up his chest, taking a seat before Naruto. Naruto making way for him to sit. Naruto scoffed. Operating so close to Iwa's borders, I thought they would be a bit more vigilant about who is in town. So, you managed to avoid the ninjas. Naruto frowned. I thought we established before my acting was acceptable. Naruto said with a sarcastic air. Enough for me to dodge my way out of those situations. Jiraiya didn't even bat an eye at his answer. Acceptable isn't good enough for me, kid. Naruto narrowed his eyes but didn't say anything further. Jiraiya always was like this. His standards were high, and Naruto gave his best to meet them. But no matter how hard he tried, it was never enough for the Sannin. He never got anything above acceptable. Just wait, you perverted ape. I'll make you eat the word tomorrow. Naruto got up from the log, stretching his arms up. Alright, I'm going to sleep. Make sure you're in top form for tomorrow, Era-Sennin. I want to beat you at your best. Jiraiya snorted, waving the comment away. You're 100 years too young for that. Once he was sure Naruto had gone to sleep, Haruto leaned towards Jiraiya. Jiraiya-sama, must you be so harsh on him? He's performed the mission rather excellently. Jiraiya was silent for a long moment before speaking. It's not about the mission, Haruto. As his teachers, I have to make sure he's always motivated to get stronger and better, even if that means I have to downgrade his performance. But Naruto's improved, hasn't he? Haruto asked pointedly. Jiraiya let out a soft chuckle, but he leaps and bounds. Every time I test him, he's better than before. Kid's got potential, just like his old man. Perhaps even more. I suspect he's been sneaking extra training behind my back. How so? Jiraiya leaned back, staring at the stars and smiling nostalgically. Naruto is built upon his father's legacy in a way I would never have dreamed about. I never expected him to get this far in just 3 years. Did you know that he altered the Dame Hokage's shadow clones jutsu in a way that all the clones were linked together by mind? Haruto's eyebrows shot up at that fact. You mean that jutsu wasn't like that when he taught it to me? Jiraiya shook his head. No, not at all. Naruto merely wanted to see whether it was possible or not. It wasn't even one of his main goals to achieve on his trip. There's so much that he's achieved during this trip that I'm nothing but proud of him. I ran out of words to describe how proud I am of him. Haruto contemplated on what he had learned. What if he had heard? How good would you say he is right now? Jiraiya gave a tiny frown at the question and pursed his lips. After a moment he smirked, and Haruto detected pride in his voice. Good enough to have a bounty on his head. How much? Jiraiya chuckled and exclaimed on his boisterous voice. Come on, Haruto. I wanna ask everything today. Save some for later. I gotta sleep now. Be ready for tomorrow. Haruto bit his lips. There was so much he wanted to ask Jiraiya, but one more question wouldn't hurt, would it? What is tomorrow anyways? Jiraiya turned back to him, and the light from the fire cast a glow on his face. His eyes were shining with such intensity that Haruto had to suppress a shiver. A fight. The final battle between him and me. One that will mark the end of his training. Jiraiya then glanced at his fist, clenching it tightly. To be honest, I'm not sure whether I can win tomorrow or not. Haruto didn't know what to say to that. The sun's rays hit Naruto's eyes at 6:30 in the morning, causing them to flutter open. He didn't get up immediately, but rather thought about what was going to happen today. Today was going to be the end of his training. The fight he would fight today would undoubtedly be one of the toughest battles he had ever fought. He knew well what Jiraiya was capable of, since the man had been training himself as well. Over the course of the trip, Jiraiya had proved himself as one of the most powerful shinobi in the world. He had pushed him hard enough that sometimes he felt his will to get up crack. It was only due to Kurama shouting at him and Jiraiya taunting his strength that he had to get back up. Every time he got up, Jiraiya sent him back down harder than before. Every time Naruto felt he had improved, Jiraiya would be quick to knock off that feeling. He had learned much from his godfather, but never once received a genuine compliment. The man was completely different from the goof that Naruto was used to talking to. Naruto was torn on what to feel. On one hand, he felt frustrated that never once he received acknowledgement of his efforts. On the other hand, he was glad that Jiraiya had made true on his promise. His promise of making Naruto one of the most dangerous men on the planet. Naruto had gave it his all on training, and then some. He had pushed himself to absolute limits. Even after Jiraiya had performed the body enchantment ritual on him a year ago, using his father's seals, he was able to see improvements though. Even if Jiraiya didn't say anything, every time he and Jiraiya sparred, it took the other man longer to put him down. Every time Jiraiya gave him a new technique, Naruto mastered it to the point that he could do it with only 1 or 2 hand seals. His body had gotten stronger every time it healed from damage, thanks to Kurama and the seal enchantments. His muscles had hardened to the point that a civilian would break his hand if he punched him, and Naruto wouldn't even feel a thing. Naruto was sure that he had lived in hell for 3 years. He wondered if his father had been trained this hard as well. He sat up, taking a deep breath. The cold air brushed across his bare torso, but he paid it no mind. Getting up, he attended to his morning rituals. Today was the last day of his training. He would make it count. Tomorrow, he would be home. He wanted to see his wife. After an hour, the 3 of them had packed up their camping supplies and were munching on some breakfast. Naruto finished off 8 boiled eggs, while Haruto munched on some fruit mix he had made for himself. Jiraiya, like him, ate 6 boiled eggs for breakfast. Once they were finished, Jiraiya told them where they needed to go. You remember the grounds that I asked you to mark 4 months ago? Naruto nodded, having understood where to go. He touched his index finger to the ground, expanding his senses to feel for the kunai he left on the ground. Within seconds, he had the location, and he motioned for them to hold on. Once they were gone in a colorless flash. Appearing instantly on the grounds, the others let go, shaking off the slight disorientation. Naruto looked around, seeing nothing had changed. They were on a rocky hill, one of the highest among all the hills in the area. Jiraiya had brought them here 4 months ago, mainly because it was quite a scheduled area and plenty of space to train. quite a secluded area and plenty of space to train. The view was great as well, as the hill overlooked a small village, the greenery around giving lots of fresh air to breathe. All in all, Naruto thought this was quite a picnic spot, training too. Jiraiya took off his bags and put them down. He turned around and smirked at his blonde student. Alright, today is your final evaluation, Naruto. I'm gonna be testing you to your limits, both physical and mental. Today, I won't be holding back on you. Naruto's heart started beating faster at his teacher's words. The blood was rushing through his veins, excitement growing with each word. The prospect of a battle with a strong opponent. He could barely keep from grinning like a madman. Do I get to drop my gravity seals for the test? Yes. I don't want you weighed down by anything. You get crushed in no time. The nonchalant and the confidence ticked Naruto off a bit, but he controlled himself. He had gained an ironclad control over his emotions over the course of the 3 years. The training wasn't something he liked, but it was necessary. Kurama wouldn't accept anything less. Naruto nodded. Alright, how are we doing this? Jiraiya folded his arms. I need 2 hours to prepare for the test. You use the time to do the same, but do it away from here. Naruto tilted his head. What am I going to wear for the test? Jiraiya rummaged in his pack and pulled out a scroll. Tossing it to Naruto, he informed him. I had ordered a vest of your size from the village. Wear it over anything you want, and no peeking. With that, Jiraiya shooed him away. Naruto sighed but complied, walking down the hill with Haruto. Haruto was bouncing a rock on his hands, a thoughtful expression on his face. I wonder what he'll cook up. Yeah, me too. Do you think you can win? Naruto scoffed. Against him? I don't think so. Haruto frowned in concern, perceiving his statement as a lack of confidence. You really should. I know so. Haruto stopped short at that, the rock falling from his grasp. The fire that burned in Naruto's eyes told him that Naruto had every intention on crushing Jiraiya's test. Naruto continued, unaware of Haruto's thoughts. He has a geographical advantage over me. That much is obvious, but he'll need a lot more than that to put me down. Plus, I'll make my own field advantage. Haruto decided not to mention that Jiraiya already had doubts of winning against his pupil. Naruto was fully fired up for the test. Oi, Naruto! Both of them turned back towards the hilltop where Jiraiya was waving at them, calling Haruto to him. Haruto, my bad. Calling Haruto to him. Haruto started walking back to Jiraiya, waving a thumb up at his cousin. All the best, Naruto. Naruto nodded with a smile. Thanks, cuz. Naruto watched the redhead hike back to Jiraiya and turned away, walking down. He needed to make his own preparations. For the next 2 hours, Jiraiya and Naruto busied themselves. Jiraiya prepared his fields while Naruto stocked up his hip pouches from his supplies. Both of them were dead serious while making their preparations, knowing that neither of them would hold back. With 5 minutes to 2 hours, Naruto finished making his preparations. He glanced at the hilltop, which Jiraiya was no doubt prepping up with various traps. In fact, he was willing to bet that Jiraiya had booby-trapped the whole hill and removed his Haraishin mark from any and everything that he had. While no one expected him could remove the mark, there were ways to disable any use of space-time jutsu. Jiraiya had been studying hard to overcome his weak spots in Funjutsu. Dang it, I knew he was looking at my notes, he muttered, no longer sensing the mark that was on Jiraiya's heart or Haruto. If he couldn't sense it on Haruto, that meant Haruto was a part of the test. But how? He didn't ponder much long, changing into his Jonin uniform for the first time in 2.5 years. He wore a dark blue t-shirt with long sleeves, the neck going halfway up his throat. He wore Ambu pants of the same color, then went down till it covered his calf muscles, leaving the rest of the leg bare. He stripped 2 orange bands on his forearms over the T, and one at the wrist and the other just beneath the elbow on both arms. Taking the roll of black bandages, he wrapped them up over the exposed part of his legs, along with some clothing, and put on his black shinobi sandals, just like the Anbu. He took the green Jonin vest and put it over, strapping it in place. He looked at his hip pouch, stocked to the full, and tied them around his hips. Last but not least, Naruto tied his headband, automatically smiling when he did it. It felt good to put on his hayate again, not having worn it in months. He forgot the feeling that he still belonged to a place. He ran a hand over his newly cut hair, sighing as he did. He liked the hairstyle he had back when he was in the village. Back then, he felt that he was closer to his father with that hairstyle, but he had to cut it because Jiraiya ordered him to. He said it brought too much attention to them. Not only that, but he said that if he wanted to make a name for himself, then he would have to step out of the shadow of his father. By returning that sort of hair, Naruto was unknowingly pushing himself further into it. Grudgingly, Naruto had conceded at that point, because he knew it would get annoying if he was only known because of his father. Now, he sported a very normal haircut. He had gotten rid of the bangs and kept his hair at a length that came to his eyebrows. It was as spiky and untamable as ever, but he kept most of it out of his eyesight. Some of it dropped down to the right of his forehead, but didn't obstruct his eyesight. He clenched his fists and rolled them, cracking his wrist. He rolled his eyes to crack his neck, rolled his shoulders, rolled his head, not eyes. I don't know why I said eyes. Rolled his shoulders, jumped a bit, did a few stretches to warm himself up. He knew Jiraiya would be coming any second now, so he released the gravity seals that kept him at 10 times the Earth's gravity. He grinned joyfully as he did a few jumps. He felt as light as a feather. Just as he finished warming up, Jiraiya appeared before him in a burst of smoke. There was nothing different about him, but Naruto knew better. This was merely a shadow clone sent to inform him of the test. Jiraiya had probably prepared to level down the entire hill, but maybe that was an exaggeration. But it was better to prepare for the worst. Naruto was prepared. Jiraiya's expression was stony, not revealing anything. Naruto knew better than to search for any sign of a tell. Jiraiya's decades of experience as a spy had trained him to control himself in the worst of situations. The waterfall training was brutal, even for him, but it had paid off. You ready? Naruto took a deep breath and calmed his excited heart down, staring back at him. He returned. Lay it on me. Pause. You have 3 objectives that you need to achieve in order to pass this test. I'll only tell you the secondary and tertiary objectives. The primary is yours to discover. Don't worry, you'll know it when you see it. Naruto nodded in understanding. Jiraiya continued, barely a hint of a smirk on his face. I've hidden a scroll of information. You have to find it in order to complete the second objective. Naruto nodded again. He already knew this was going to be tough, since Jiraiya would undoubtedly have used Fuinjutsu to enhance his traps. Breaking Fuinjutsu arrays was something that Naruto always looked forward to, considering that Jiraiya's specialization was in sealing various types of objects and security. He had a challenge on his hands. The third objective, to defeat me. By defeat me, doesn't mean that you have to land a critical strike on me. It's more than that. Naruto frowned. What could be more than landing a finishing blow on your opponent? Jiraiya held up 5 fingers. You will have to land not 1, but 5 critical strikes on me. Naruto gave the man a flat look, causing Jiraiya to nervously chuckle. I mean, not actual land those strikes that would kill me. You mean just give an impression that I could have killed you with the particular strike? Naruto clarified, seeing Jiraiya having some trouble framing his sentences. Jiraiya snapped his fingers. Yeah, just like that. Naruto folded his arms across his chest. I'm sorry, but why 5 strikes? I could simply imitate a strike that cuts off your head. Don't be too cocky, kid. It's to test your improvisation against an enemy who is as persistent as a cockroach and as genius as you are. Once you land a strike, you must release me from whatever trap I'm in. The fight will then continue after 10 seconds of rest. You won't use the Rasengan, or any of the variations as well, Jiraiya revealed. An unusual test, but one that Naruto would relish. He was dying to test out some of his new moves that he had been developing in secret. I have told you everything you need to know. Any questions from your side? He received a fist to the stomach for an answer. That instantly popped him. No, we can begin.